Hello, everybody. Oh, I have to use it if I pick it up, don't I? Hello, everyone. I'm Lee Lewis, the Artistic Director here at Queensland Theatre, and welcome back to the Bill Brown. We are standing on the lands of the Yagara and the Turrbal people, and with a storytelling tradition that goes back over 65,000 years, this has been one of the few years where there haven't been stories told on this land. So we are looking forward to a 2021 where that will not be the case. And we look forward with the elders to a time when we are working together to tell stories of this great nation for the next 65,000 years, shall we say. Welcome to this subscriber briefing for the holidays. This is one of the plays that didn't make it onto the stage in its allocated time, but we have managed to pull to the end of the year so that we actually have a play to finish off the year with. And it is my very great pleasure to bring on the team that are going to make this for you. Come on in, guys. Okay. There we go, there's a microphone over there, and you guys are going to hand that amongst yourselves. It has been cleaned, they've all washed their hands, and we'll wash them again at the end. So we're about as COVID clean as we can get, and I want to thank you all for helping us for the first time of bringing people in a COVID responsible manner into the theatre. I have to say, I never thought I'd be this happy to see a half full house, but you're gorgeous. I love every single one of you. So, here we are. Is it November? It's November. We should have been sitting here in July, but we're not. We're coming into Christmas. But what we have for the end of the year, and the reason we're so delighted to be doing this play is because this was the winner of the Queensland Premier's Drama Award. Now, most of you will know, but some of you might not know, that this award is unlike any award in the country in that it guarantees the winning play a production on our stage. It's a huge thing. It's a partnership between the Queensland Government and the Queensland Theatre in investing in the future of Australian storytelling. Because there are a lot of competitions which will give the writers a cash prize, which is a great thing, I don't deny that. But actually saying to the playwright, no, your play is going to go on the stage, is quite extraordinary. And over the last 20 years of the award, there have been some beautiful works created at Queensland Theatre through this award, and really important playwrights have been supported. In this particular year, the playwright whose play won is sitting right here. It's David Mcgarrity. And with any new play, the playwright sits at the centre of the whole process, so of course you're going to be the first I introduce, but what I'd like you all to do is introduce yourselves. I'm going to hand them, well actually if the microphone's at that end, let's start at the other end. There we go, you can start at the other end. It's totally fine, we'll go from there.
I'm Sophie Watkins, I'm the Assistant Stage Manager.
I'm Nicole Neal, I'm the Stage Manager.
Hello, I'm Brian Probitz, I play Bob Holiday.
Hello, I'm Matthew Yana, I play Oliver Holiday.
I'm Matthew Erskine, I'm the sound designer.
Hi, I'm Sean Foran, I'm the composer.
Hello, I'm Louise Bremer and I play Summer Holiday.
Hi, I'm Sarah Winter and I'm the production designer.
Hello, I'm Nathan Sibthorpe. I'm the projection designer.
Good evening, I'm Jason Glenwright and I'm the lighting designer.
David Mcgarrity, playwright.
Bridget Boyle, director. Hello. Now, this is one of the first teams back in the theatre to create a new work. And I have to say, it's a real thrill to have all of you here. Finally, thank you for hanging in there with us all through the year to get to this point. But I'm going to kick off with some questions for you about what your year's been like, how you are, and what it's like creating a work in a COVID environment. I'm going to start with you, Bridget.
Oh, okay. Hi. Thanks, Lee. So, of course,
what more can be said about 2020? It's been really challenging for all of us in the creative space, as you know, and in many other industries. Of course, making art, but specifically making art that calls for everyone to be in a closed space in a room together has been incredibly challenging, of course, in 2020. So getting back to it, it felt kind of strange, but great at the same time. I guess rehearsing for this work, which at the heart of it has the idea of human connection, has felt really, really amazing. It's the beautiful story that David has told and that we're all working to bring together to life has a really a simple and beautiful idea about what it is to be together on this planet, which seems particularly apt, I feel, for this point in time. Dave, did you want to speak about that?
I can speak about what a tricky year it's been. Yes, it was going to open in July, so I'm really glad that it's happening now, and it'll be much better with you here.
Now, there have been some very specific constraints, haven't there, about creating a work, and the first of which you're actually seeing a little bit reflected here, because one of the big constraints we have is that we can't have people talking within 4 meters of the first audience member. So you're going to see some changes in the shape of work over the course of the next year, because that's going to be impacting every production. And I remember there was a conversation with you, Bridget, when you went, 4 meters, how are we going to make the play? And it was like, it's okay, we can work with this. And
yeah, absolutely. And this idea of where 4 meters is and getting that into our heads, but also creative blocking, so that when actors are performing, they can. In a space like this, it's actually quite easy, because we can creatively block so that when actors are speaking, they're going to speak this way, so that when the aspiration is actually going in this direction. It's crazy to be thinking that, but that's what we've been doing. The work, as it is, has lots of sequences which are movement based, where the story is being told by bodies in the space in interplay with the beautiful vision design that Nathan has made and with the beautiful sound design that Matt and Sean have made. So that's actually really been in our favour, the fact that so much of this storytelling is actually word without aspiration, as it were.
now, given that this play was not written for this time, like it's taken a number of years to come to the stage. What is the difference, David, between the time, I suppose, this spirit place you were in when you first wrote it, and what it is to bring it to the stage now? Are you thinking about the story differently, or?
Yes, I am. The audience has a role to play in the work, which you'll discover when you come to see the work. And it's a very mellow, very soft, very involved way of helping tell the story that's happening on stage. So I wasn't just being flip when I said it'll be better with you here, but the show actually needs you here. It really does. And you'll find out what's going to happen on the night. But yeah, I started writing the thing in 2008, believe it or not. So it's actually had a very long evolution, and it's quite bizarre to be sitting on the set for it right now. I don't know if I can tell that story in full now, but I can give you a précis if you're interested. Have you heard of a show called The Teletubbies? The company that made that show asked writers all over the world to create a magical kingdom in 500 words, with a view to that perhaps being part of the next series, which I did, and it was set at the seaside, my magical kingdom. And at the same time I was writing a follow-up to my picture book, The Empty City, which was about a family who went on a holiday but they all got a cold. And so these two stories, this magical kingdom by the seaside and this family having a terrible holiday, kind of eventually merged over a period of years, and gradually the magical kingdom sort of faded away, and the flu faded away as well too, and I was left with this lovely story of this family going through a really tricky time at the beach. And it really is about what it means to be together, not just in the same space, but what it means to be together. And theatre's a great place to tell those kind of stories. And it involves a lot of music and vision as well too. These fragments that you'll see up here are also projection surfaces as well too, because the show is in some ways about the formation of memory and the creation and losing of memory as well too. So it's wonderful to have this instrument, as Nathan and Bridget have called it, this story machine, to be able to tell this story in a way that's probably quite different to any piece of theatre you've ever seen before. I'm going to put that right out there and hand the mic over to someone else.
Well, given that you started to tell us the story about where this came from, I'd like to jump in with you, Louise. Yes. Given that you're bringing to life Mum, Summer Holiday, do you want to tell us a little bit about where the play starts? Not where it goes, but where it starts for you, and what it's been like for you in the scheme of the year to have this story on the boil, if you were, ready for a particular time, and then to carry it for longer?
Yeah, sure. So the play opens with the Holiday family on their way to the beach or to a beachside destination. But I think one of the great things about this play, it's a bit like an onion in that there's just so many things that sort of, once you take the layers off, there's things that bubble up underneath. And I think that once you really engage with the story, there's some really very universal themes and experiences in there that I think will really resonate with the people that come along to see it. And in terms of the fact that it's finally going back on, as was mentioned previously, this was going on in July. I actually like the fact that it's going to be on in summer, given, well, not in me, but in summer. Just because I think that it lends itself to that sort of warmer weather kind of thing, but also too, I just feel so incredibly grateful and blessed to be in work again. As Bridget alluded to, it's been a very challenging year, I think, for everybody, but particularly working in the creative arts when we've had venues closed and things like that. It's been a real blessing to be able to come back to work, although I'll admit in the first week I was feeling quite a sense of survivor guilt in a way, particularly having a lot of friends and colleagues in Melbourne and at that stage when they were going through very heavy lockdown. So it's one thing to really celebrate coming back, and I think that this is a really beautiful play to cap off what's been a very challenging year.
Now, Brian, you've done many works on the Queensland Theatre stage. So your relationship with the not telling of stories for a year would be a big absence. What is it like to come back to this story?
It's really delightful, actually. It's a story that has always enchanted. I've done a few developments on it. I actually saw the very first, or one of the, I saw the, when it was in competition for the Premier Award, and I remember thinking at the time, wow, I'd love to be involved in this play. And then it kind of happened, which is really terrific. So it's like you're coming back to a long lost relative that you haven't seen for a while, and it's a relative that welcomes you. And as Louisa said, it's like peeling an onion or diving into a pool. The more you dive, the more rewarding it is, because the themes in it are incredibly universal, very accessible, and also that the dialogue's beautiful, but there's lots of silences between the dialogue that speaks just as loudly, resonates just as well. So I love it. It's terrific, and it's always a relief to come back to a company where you know how it works, and you feel very welcome. So yes, very enjoyable to be back.
And sitting next to you is a young man who's making his Queensland Theatre debut, Matthew. Welcome to Queensland Theatre. Woo.
Thank you.
Now, I have to say, as an artistic director, when a playwright writes a role for a young actor, there's that moment where we go, surely we could find someone who is a little bit older, just looks young, and then you come up against a director and a writer who go, no, it has to be a young person, and then so lo and behold, you're pulled out of school for more hours in the week than... What was your first response to reading this play as a young man?
Well, my brain is not very well developed. So a lot of what was going on kind of went under the radar at first. But then a couple of reads in, I started picking up on all of the subtleties of it, and it was beautifully written. I loved reading it. I've read it, before I even started... before I started working on it here, because it had been sent to, I'm speaking. I had read through it a couple of times beforehand because I just loved reading it, and there was a very deep message there that I've never personally experienced that, but having read through it, it was kind of well, not eye-opening, but I felt some things, and it was very heartwarming to read, and yeah.
You do realise you're coming into the theatre in a very strange way at the moment, because in working in the building, when the actors first came in, we had to actually find a way to separate the actors from the staff, try to separate their contact with the staff so that if there was an outbreak, we could still maybe keep the play on. So we've got all of these different paths in the building. So you've been introduced to literally the bowels of the building to get to the bathroom from your rehearsal room. There was another rehearsal going on in the next rehearsal room of Mouthpiece, and we couldn't let those the two groups of actors cross over. So there are these friends who wanted to say hi, but were not allowed to actually be near each other. So there have been some very strange things in order to try and keep a safe working space. So I look forward to your next performance, your next production at Queensland Theatre, when you can actually come in the front door and use the main steps and the kitchen maybe, as opposed to, yeah. But thank you for being a part of this in this very strange time. I think your enthusiasm for the project has been actually quite a light in the company, and we've enjoyed having you so far, and we can't wait to see your performance. David, you mentioned the projections that are part of your original imagining in the script. Would you like to talk to me about how that conversation started with Nathan, insofar as how to conjure up the world that you had in your head? Because it's one thing for a playwright to write it, it's another thing for a designer to look at the task at hand and bring the pictures out of your head into the space. And I know it's a conversation with Bridget as well, but I suppose I'm heading towards Nathan, really, answering what that's like. So sorry, I've changed the nature of the question. I'll take it back to Nathan.
Well, I'll start by saying a lot of the time sound and screen kind of gather at the end of a work, and that sometimes screen is just kind of like expensive wallpaper in theatre. And what I really wanted, and what Nathan and I have done a fair bit together in other projects, is to make sure that screen and sound dance together all the way through the writing and through the development of the work, and continue to influence each other in the actual performance as well too. So it's part of the design really in the writing, but the realisation, I now hand to you, Nathan Sibthorpe.
Thank you very much, David Mcgarrity. Yes, this has been a really unique process, I think, as a vision designer. I've been in rehearsals with the team every day of the process, and so in a way we're treating this media, and the same with Matt and sound, using sound and vision kind of as a performer and as an integral part of the storytelling. It's written in the script in a way that if you didn't have the budget for a projector, you couldn't tell this story, you couldn't get across the ideas in the play without that form. There's this beautiful idea in the play that David's written that it feels like it's an ode to art itself. There's this conversation about artworks and paintings that are found in this space, and the dad kind of undermines the value of paintings briefly and says, oh, why not just have a window? Why all these paintings of a beach if the beach is just out there? And the young boy says, well, maybe it's to see the world as somebody else saw it, to see the beach as the artist was seeing it. And I think that the play itself does that. It captures these moments and reinterprets. And there's a real love letter to memory and art and story as a way of capturing not just what we're experiencing, but what is our version of that? What are we going to hold on to? What is it going to become for us? So the way that we've tried to translate these other forms in the work, in using like sound design, but also music and vision, is to be quite representative and abstract, not trying to capture something that's kind of photoreal and this is what it is, this is where we are. It's not a virtual backdrop so much. It's more and speaking to kind of capturing memory and essence and moments of experience.
Okay. Now, Sarah, you were given, it's always a challenge for any designer to come at a new Australian play, because you're creating a world where there has not been one before, and you're the first designer to tackle the holidays. What were some of the starting places for you? Or what was your initial connection to the script when it landed in your inbox with a thought of, would you like to do this? Where was the point where you said yes?
Ooh, that's quite a challenging question. I think the point that I said yes was even before I read the script, because I heard of the team that was working on it, and I love these people's brains. So I went, anything that David's written I know is going to be beautiful and exquisite, and I'm working with Nathan, Jason, Bridget together and figuring out how that sits and what it is. But reading through the script, I grew up on the mid-north coast of New South Wales, and I always grew up on the beach. I go there before school, I play around. If it was a full moon, we go and sit there and watch the eclipse or whatever it might be. So I've got a real connection with the beach and with living by the sea. So that felt really familiar to me. And I think as well, this idea, I was really struck by, I don't want to give too much away, but by the journey of the family and how universal that is. Everyone's gone through loss or change or struggling with how to relate to each other in strange circumstances. So I think that really felt familiar in a very Australian way of telling the story.
So, and in what you're not giving away, I'm quite new to this process of the subscriber briefing where we're looking actually at the set. Normally there would be this great big reveal and I would be not letting any vision of this go out into the world. So it's okay to share it with you, I'm pretty sure. But that question, a big question that was a conversation that's been going on all year has been this magic stuff. So living on the beach when you're little, playing on the beach, and then the difficulty of putting real sand into space. Real sand's dusty. So over the course of the run, you end up with dust all through your building because it moves around and you have to then wet it and you have to tank it. So it becomes a very expensive process. So very early on, you had, I don't know, some artistic director going, would you consider not sand? What is this magic stuff?
This is rubber crumb. We were talking about in the production schedule, when do we crumb? When do we get to crumb the set? So yeah, it's finely chopped rubber crumb, and it's quite amazing because we think it looks quite remarkably like sand, and it's quite cushy underfoot. It's probably one of the only, touch wood, but one of the only sets if you fall over, you'll be gently hugged by a pillow. But yeah, we sort of went back and forth. Do we have real sand? But that's a horrible experience to have in a theatre. Do we have nothing? But then when you read through the script, it calls for it as a creative play space to have it here.
There are some things that a script calls for, doesn't
Yeah.
it, where you have to make it real for the play to work. And the sand, if you like, was always such a big part of the imaginative landscape. It just came into the real as well. I mean, it starts, as it does with any beach house visit, with mum sweeping the sand out. You know, it's something deeply recognisable in the way that we live with it. But yeah, the fact that it's the stuff, if you mix this up with PVC glue, that's the stuff they put in the kids' playgrounds. So it's soft fall in its loose form. So yeah, very safe and not dusty, and we can keep it at the end. We can just keep it and use it for others. So looking forward to more sand plays in the future of Queensland Theatre. Now, I could chat to these people all day, but I'd also like to open it up to questions that you might have about the production. Yes?
I've got two questions. What's under the wraps? And secondly, for David, winning the award, did that really scare the proverbial out of you that you had to have this thing ready to be performed and now you have to explain it?
Well, the first question, what's under the wraps, I might throw to the designer, Sarah.
Sure thing. There's a variety of furniture and other elements that are revealed in the opening scenes of the play, but I'll keep that under wraps. Yeah.
And for me, it's essentially, I trust this all Queensland team to make the work. And Bridget and I worked together really closely for a long time. In fact, we first met on tour for a Queensland Theatre Company show. Well, we'd met before that, but spending a long time on tour together. So I trust the team. And beyond that, I can't really say. Was your question, was I worried? Yeah, I was a bit nervous coming in here tonight, but I think I just trust the team, I think, is the short answer to that. And I think there's a certain amount of letting go that must be done with a new work, and part of that trust means that these people are going to come up with ideas that build on and quite often are better than the ideas that are in the script itself. So I think that interpretation, that people might have different interpretations of something that I've written, is not something you should get all antsy about, but rather something you should welcome, because that process continues with an audience as well.
So with the extra months, did you work and make changes? Did you use that time advantageously?
Yeah, a little, although the work as part of the Queensland Premier's Drama Award, and thank you for the question, had quite a lot of development done on it at that period. And also, after it was nominated as the award winner, we had another short creative development where we were able to experiment with some of the screen and music elements to see if they worked. And so Bridget and I were doing a gig at the Butterfly Club in Melbourne in late July last year, and that was when I was essentially putting the finishing touches on it. Since then, the only real changes that have been made have been finalising the version for publication, which Playlab will be releasing for opening night, and also to, up to a certain point, incorporating the changes that the actors made into the work, but that had to stop at a certain point so the book could go off to publication. But no, I used the time to write more songs and write another play.
Now, Matt, he's like, who's next? Oh, no, sound Matt. A writer lives in the world of words and images, but not many have as much sound in their imagination as David Mcgarrity. What was your first response to this particular work and to the idea of the sound world that was going to have to wrap around this imagined space?
When I started reading it and saw how, like, some of the specifics that were in the script itself, I sort of thought, oh, this is going to be kind of easy. I can just paint by numbers here. So I'm kind of being told a lot of what needs to happen. And then I actually, as I got into it a bit further and started to really read into the narrative of the play and how everything's interconnected and everything's working together, I realised, oh, I've got a lot to do here. So yeah, it's taken a few goes to read through and just really pick apart everything. And as things developed during the during rehearsals, we've found there are moments that I thought were going to be this big that are actually this big, but incredibly precise. And so I have to keep that precision, but then try and create some dynamics around it. And yeah, so it's been an interesting process. There's been a lot to unpack and discover as we go.
It's the fascinating thing about a new work, isn't it? You think you know the mountain when you read the play, and then the closer you get to it, the bigger the mountain gets. And it doesn't mean you don't like climbing mountains, but some days you think you're crazy. I say that looking at the crazy lady next to me, who's directing this ship. There is no incentive in Australia to direct new plays. In other countries, if you direct the first production of a play, you get a percentage ongoing for the life of the play. So the only reason you do it, in Australia is for love of the play. And sometimes because your friends blackmail you into it. So I have a question for you. Was it the play or the playwright that drew you to this?
Of course, it was both. Of course. What else can I say? No, absolutely. David and I have a very long history, as he said, of working together across a number of different forms of art. We've worked together as actors. We've worked together as co-creators of work, of music-driven work. And I think I've actually even acted in a film that you've directed, a short film you've directed, David. So we've got a sort of a long history of making art together. I think once, Lee, I hope I can say this, that you described making new work as an extreme sport. And absolutely, it sometimes can seem that way because yes, you're breaking new work. You've got it's all you. This work hasn't lived in the world before, and so every step of the way you're kind of going. We're taking our first steps into a brand new country, exhilarating and exciting, but sometimes terrifying. But yeah, the beautiful challenges of this work have been incredibly rewarding. And just to further what Matt was saying about the sound world of the work, every moment in this work involves not just the bodies in the space, not just the way the bodies interact, these bodies interact with each other, or indeed the physical world, but how they interact with the video world, with the sound world, with the lighting world. This is an incredibly rich and collaborative process where every step of the way we're making story moments as a team, and it's really exciting. And I don't know if it often happens like that, but it's really exciting. And I think for an audience, it'll be hopefully a really rewarding and rich experience.
We've talked about everything else. Jason Glenwright, don't think you're getting away from... Jason's a lighting designer, and I've had the pleasure of working with him a couple of times already. But the question of what it is to work in the Bill Brown space, which is now just on 2 years old, but actually still very new to its audience relationship. What is it like as a lighting designer to come into this space with all when we're still learning the challenges of this new theatre? What is this play offering you that other plays haven't offered you?
Great question. I suppose the biggest challenge of this space is the fact that it's a corner stage. You can't rely on some of the techniques of other sort of end-on stages, as you will, like with side light and things, to be able to do certain images. As you could hear so far, there's a lot of projection in this show, and when you use a lot of projection, you got to be careful with light, because if I hit light from the front, Nathan's projection disappears. And today we've actually been plotting the show. The lighting cues have been lucky enough we're at that stage, and it's a subtle art. We've got to make sure we can see the actors in here, and we also have to make sure we can see the imagery clearly and sharply. So, and that's a fun process. It's highly collaborative, and then we run it with sound because this whole dynamic works together, and then you pull the set into it, and it looks fantastic. But then coming back to the question of the theatre, it just relies upon a slightly... I suppose I always approach this theatre as if I'm lighting it as if it's in a regular theatre, and I just turn everything a little bit 45 degrees, and it works that way. It's a beautifully fit out theatre. We've got some exceptional equipment in here, so we're exceptionally lucky that we can we've got vast amounts of options up our sleeve and ideas that we can keep shaping the play with and exploring ideas with. So it's a fun play because there's a lot of that to do in this play too.
Yeah, you haven't. It's quite funny. I always feel jealous of the lighting designer because there's nothing they can really do in the rehearsal room. We ask composers and sound designers to actually put in their work into the space, also with vision designers. But the lighting designer, until they actually get the toys in the space, they can think about it, they can imagine it, they do a lot of planning, but I can't see anything until you're in the space.
Yeah, and I also think in this sort of process, I am the last piece of the puzzle. Everyone else has done something. Today was my first day, essentially. Of course, I've had to design the Regency rehearsals and do all the pre-production things. I've been working on this show for almost a year now, but today was my day to shine, at least to begin to start shining. And yeah, spotlight, bang. And it's a scary bit, but it's also the bit where you go, this is where it all works, this all comes together. And it's in this process, sometimes when you are working not as with projection, sometimes you're giving, and sometimes I'll light a space, and the performers and the production will work within that space. But in this sort of style of theatre, I'm responsive. Everyone else is giving me their options, and I'm like the glue, sticking it all together a little bit, and kind of going, okay, so we have to make sure everything looks good. The projection has to look good. The set has to look good. Has to tie in with the timing of sound. But then Bridget wants the actors to be seen, and you don't want lights in your eyes too much. So there's a lot of different things, and that's the fun challenge. I love that. It's exciting.
It's true. Ballet is much easier. You don't have to see people's faces. So you don't It's a big thing. We actually understand words better when we can see the face more, because we tend to lip read as humans, especially in the theatre. And you go, so invariably there'll be this beautiful picture, and then the director will go, "I need to see their face," and you just watch a lighting designer go. And if it's comedy, even more so. Just a little bit brighter, and the poor lighting designer, I always feel a little bit sorry, like in relationship to lighting designers, don't you?
Well, that's my job. But also, then Bridget goes, "It's got to be a bit brighter." And then we go, "The projection's washed out." Okay, we'll pull that down. Oh, we can't see their face. Okay, then I'll... Okay. So, yeah, it's a fine balance.
Now, one of the magic things in this space is this net that you see above your heads. See the net there? It's actually structural. So instead of having to put ladders up to reach all the lights, we can actually walk around up there and fix the lights. It's kind of freaky when you see it happen. And it's even freakier to walk on, but it's a high tension net. So all of those cables are tensioned so that they can take both the weight of all the lights and all the equipment and people walking around on top of them. I haven't gone out there yet on a walk. I've stood at the edge and I'm saving it up. I don't know what for, but it's actually, what it's done in the design of the theatre is save us an enormous amount of time exactly at this time. As we move into the theatre, because we're not putting up all the ladders to move lights, we can actually work quite quickly. So it's been a transformative choice for the company insofar as the way we can put a work in. And when you're doing a new work, there's so much ground to cover. The fact that you don't have to pull a ladder out is kind of amazing. It seems small, but it's actually huge in the making. And it allows light and projection conversations to happen a lot quicker. And you're nodding there, Louise, because as an actor in a tech, which you're about to start, often you've got to stand there for extended periods while someone gets a ladder and fixes a light. Can you just stand there? So I don't know where I'm going with that, apart from just sheer wonder of the technology of this particular space. But it is pretty cool. And I suppose at this point I get kind of overwhelmed by the scale of the enterprise that a new Australian play is. We don't know how it's going to work until you come and see it. This is not like when in talking about new plays as extreme sport, I do quite mean that. It's kind of like base jumping or wingsuit flying. It's incredibly exhilarating, mostly because we don't know how it's going to end. You give over your night to a story. You don't know if it's a happy ending or a sad ending. You trust our marketing materials and go, "Oh, this looks good. There's been a picture of Brian running for a year now." And you think, "I'm going to go see that play," but you really have no idea. You have no idea, and there's something quite magical in that process of giving over to a new play. I mean, you come to Romeo and Juliet, and you know they're both going to die, pretty much, unless you got Barry Kosky running the show. So, but with this, you actually have no idea where David Mcgarrity is leading you. But you give over a bit of trust to us, which is why you're actually my favourite audiences. I'm not supposed to have favourites, but my audiences for new plays are definitely my favourites because you're curious. You're willing to hand over a part of your night without knowing in advance what it's going to be like. Can you give me an idea, Bridget, of what the feeling of the play is going to be, without telling the story?
Without giving away major plot points, this work every time I watch a run that the actors perform, I get a great sense of. Sometimes I get very teary. I get a great sense of, aren't we all lucky to be here together? That's the feeling that I get. I get a sense of playfulness, of joy, of whimsy, but overall, that's what I take from this work. We're all here together, and that's the greatest thing we can ask for right now. So yeah. But it's also very funny. So hopefully, as I said, I get a sense of warmth and joy as well.
I think it's an interesting comment that you inadvertently made there about Australian writing. There's something about Australian writing where we always mix in our laughter with our tears. We always talk about it's a serious play, but it's also funny. And I think there's a line that Australian writers will navigate because, I don't know the big because, but I think it's common to a lot of Australian plays that we cannot get away from our sense of humour about things. I'm going to go down the line, and the people down the end of the line are actually, you'll be lucky, Nicole. You've got a few people to think about this. Your wish for the audience. If you had one wish for the audience in leaving this play, what would it be? Everyone's going to answer it, though.
That it makes something and you sing.
That it takes you on an exciting journey.
That you have a moment where you think you recognize something familiar but can't quite describe it.
I think that you take a big, deep breath in and a lovely long exhale.
I think it reminds you about what's truly important in life.
I think that maybe that you notice the music but also don't notice it.
Albums are in the foyer. That you can go, it takes you on a journey and you feel something.
That no matter how bad the joke, you will still laugh.
That you can see yourself in the story and the person next to you in the story as well.
That particularly in this year, you can have 90 minutes where you don't have to worry about outside these walls. That you have a good time.
Can I wrap it up? Now, Nicole, I'm probably just going to ask you one more question. As the person in charge of this space, what are the Nicole's a stage manager for this. What were the things that you anticipated when you first took this job on, and what are the surprise things that have caught you by surprise?
It is very strange to stage manage in a COVID world. Instead of making cup labels, we made chair labels because we couldn't share chairs in the rehearsal room. Little things like Sophie wipes down every single prop after everyone has touched it. And that's every single day, no matter what. The amount of hand sanitizer we use is ridiculous. And I think particularly navigating this building as well with, like was said before, the fact that our cast was using downstairs bathrooms. So what normally is a 2-minute toilet break becomes a 10-minute journey. And just in terms of a schedule, there are things you don't anticipate where you're like, okay, cool. Break's going to take 20 minutes today. Sweet. Yeah. I think that's the main differences.
Well, it's an interesting partnership because the stage manager is actually moves between the company and the cast, and is sort of that glue, if you like, and is the primary communication between what's happening in the rehearsal room and what's happening in the office around it. And so you've probably carried the greatest burden of COVID-safe rehearsing and ensuring things happen. As everybody in the audience thinks of their final question, I just wanted to come back to you, Nicole. Are there ways of working that have come out of this time where you think, actually, I'm going to keep that going forward?
I think just the hygiene level is actually quite amazing because normally once someone gets a cold in a cast, everyone gets it. And it's something that just goes through, but we have had no sickness because, touch wood, because our hygiene levels have been so high. I feel like there's a lot more open communication about what your limits are as well, and a lot more openness about being, I'm not feeling well today, so I'm going to sit out, which I think as an industry is something that we have struggled with massively up until this point. So I think there are some positives to come out of this.
Yeah, I'm just interested because we're in that place, fortunately, in Queensland, where we are starting to go back to things that we've done before, and that question about hygiene and health and I think the washing the hands will never go away, and expectation of hand sanitizer, but that actually the idea that we can be a healthier society and that we can take care of each other better. I think there are starting to be some real gains that we can travel forward with. as we get back to the unnormal life of culture in this city. So, are there any more questions for this beautiful cast before I let them start their tech? Oh yes, up the back there. Oh, that's interesting because this award was the 2018-19 award, and I think I don't know. There were 90 other entries. This is Sophia Hall, our director of programming, sitting in the front row, giving me she's my cheat sheet. So there were 90 entries, and I actually was on the selection panel that year. And yes, there was another play as well, which I love very much. And watch this space is all I'll say. Now, insofar as the finding and the development of new works, what's amazing about a playwriting competition like this is that we get plays from around the country, and they're read anonymously among a panel, and they all get read at least twice to form a long list. And then the judging panel meets with all of the long-listed playwrights and talks about what their hopes and dreams are for the production. And then knowing it's going into production, we shortlist 3 of those plays that get a year's worth of development, 6 months to a year worth of development. And then there's a finals night where we decide which play, where they all get read, professionally read, and then we decide. So it's quite a long process, but it does expose you to a lot of other writers and plays at different stages, because sometimes there's a really interesting idea. It's just there's no way it can be ready within the 18 months that is the framework of the award. But you definitely stay in touch with the writers. Australian playwrights live often a very isolated life. We're spread out across a huge country. So when you find a story that you really like, you stay in touch with them and you wait for it to come. I'm a very patient woman when it comes to a new Australian play. Sometimes you wait 10 years for a story to grow. I mean, 8 years since, 2008. You can't make a writer go faster than they want to go. I know, I've tried. I beat them, it doesn't work. But there are definitely, in the time that I've been involved with the award, which is like nearly 10 years now, there are a number of plays I've stayed connected to. And I think that's a really lovely path towards this stage for a play, is coming through that award. Oh, there's one up there.
He does. Dave is a very good composer and performer. So that was probably an important starting point, because he actually had like a temp track list of songs. And I think there was a John Hopkins work on there. John Hopkins is a British electronica kind of artist. And so we had a bit of a shared love of that person's music. And so Dave said to me, here's my temp track list. And I really liked a lot of them, which is a great start as a composer to have some temp tracks that you can identify with. And I probably thought, I can do something like that. I can stay in that kind of world. And then we did a creative development, which was maybe a year ago. I can't quite recall. And so I wrote some music for that, and which was kind of based on the temp tracks, but still a little bit different. And Bridget and the team kind of liked what they heard and thought that it was working with the direction of the play. And so that was the starting point for me, those temp tracks. And I think one of the little drafts that I wrote in that creative development, and I'm still kind of using a fair chunk of it. It's just way more developed, but the melodic ideas and so forth are still there. But it's been on a fairly, like with everyone, it's been on a long kind of journey to get to where it is today. The break was really good for me because I could just think about it for a while and not have to write under pressure.
If I might add something, remember that ad, you're soaking in it? That ad? This play is soaking in music. And the temp tracks that Sean's referring to were pieces of music mentioned by name in an earlier draft of the script. And apart from the compositions that Sean has done, there's also a lot of what some people might call Oz rock in the play. So bands like Cold Chisel and various other bands like that. And so they exist as well too. We have the rights to some of those songs to actually hear them in the piece. So not only is there music all the way through the piece is also structured quite musically as a play. So I'm a really big fan of Sean's compositions, and there was a lovely moment where all the temp tracks were gone and I was listening to one of Sean's demos through earphones while looking at the sea up at the Sunshine Coast, and I went, yes, a gigantic sigh as the waves came in. And I'm really looking forward to hearing them in this space as well.
Well, much to look forward to, and I know some of you really looking forward to the feature of this night, which is, of course, the Lucky Door Prize. We actually have 4 Lucky Door Prizes of double passes to see something at Dendy, which a lot of us haven't done this year. So come on in, Marnie, and we have to figure out how we're doing this in a non-COVID time, because I don't think there are tickets. Where are we? Okay. Where am I? Row H, seat 53. Oh, yeah. Well, that's exciting. Okay. All right. Oh, actually, I'm going to mix it up. Mix it up. Okay. Down the bottom. Okay. Row J, seat 22. Oh, yeah. There we go. Okay. Row H, seat 15. Yay! I'm sorry, it's all the ones up the back. I'm not doing this on purpose. It's not discrimination against the front row, I promise. Oh, okay, row G, seat 15. There we go. Our 4 lucky door prize winners. You're going to come down and see Monica at the end. And I wanted to thank you all for joining us for this subscriber briefing for the holidays, brought to you by Brisbane City Council, with our great apologies to the council for not being able to have this through the year for certain unknown circumstances. But thank you so much for coming back. It is a real joy to see you, and it's going to be a real joy to share the holidays with you in just a few days' time. Thanks very much.